What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and thank you for clicking on this video. My name's Terence. I'm a pre-med student currently in my gap year, looking to start medical school in August of 2020. If you're new, please subscribe and like the video. Turn on post notifications so you get updates when I post. I'll be posting weekly videos on my pre-med experience, my experience with the MCAT, and my future medical school experience. In this video, I'll be discussing my path from a college student athlete, how I eventually transferred schools and became pre-med, and then went on to have a successful medical school application cycle where to this date I've had acceptances to over 5 MD schools. So please enjoy me on my journey and let's get into my story. So when I think about my perspective of how I eventually found medicine, I kind of think that I'm probably in the majority where I didn't grow up always knowing I wanted to be a doctor. I didn't have any doctors in my family that I knew of. I eventually found out that I do have an orthopedic spine surgeon, my dad's cousin, so my second cousin who's an orthopedic surgeon. But I didn't know anyone in my immediate family that was a doctor. And I grew up, not really understanding or knowing what it took to become a doctor. And that was never a dream that I always chased. Growing up, I loved different things. I liked sports as any young kid did. And I had interest in sports journalism for a little bit. I also had interest in becoming a lawyer because I liked, debate and law. I enjoyed business. I was interested in real estate because my parents were interested in real estate as well. So being a doctor was not something that was at the front of my list since I was a little kid. I don't have one of those stories, and what makes my story unique is I feel that I kind of just followed my own path and eventually fell into this love for becoming a doctor and medicine. I remember being young, I always wanted to kind of know the reason behind things. I think that's why I was drawn to science. I wanted to be the one that knew all the fancy names for all these things that people didn't know about. I wanted to be the one that understood the reason why things exist and the reason why, we function as humans. And I was drawn towards the human body and physiology in that way. And from a young age, I kind of eventually steered down that path to finding science and finding healthcare. Another thing that kind of steered me towards healthcare was being an athlete. During my senior year, during my senior year, I was a little bit hurt, so I spent specific time with the athletic trainers in my high school. But throughout my 4 years as a student, I kind of, grew an interest in athletic training and healthcare in that way because, I idolized those guys. I idolized how they spent all the time they did with athletes. That's something I wanted to do. I wanted to be a part of athletics my entire life. I also admired how they took care of people, how they made people feel, how they were idolized by other athletes, driving around the golf cart behind the school and helping people and going from place to place, in a high energy situation, being on the sidelines at games and different things like that, I was drawn to. And eventually, when I became a senior, I decided athletic training is what I wanted to do. At that same time, I was getting recruited to play college basketball, and I was fortunate enough to where I was able to get looks from Division III and Division II schools to play college basketball, and eventually ended up choosing a Division III school, state school, in New York State to play college basketball. And they also had an accredited athletic training program. So I was basically at that time having my cake and eating it too, fulfilling some life dreams of playing college basketball, and also at the same time getting to study something that I truly felt I had a passion for. So at that time, I was on cloud nine. Everything was amazing. I was going to this great school with great facilities. I get to go away to school upstate New York, so I was about 7 hours away from my home on Long Island. And as a kid, that's what you want. You want to go away. A lot of people do. They want to go away. They want to live on their own. They want to experience that freedom. And I was able to do all of that. So everything was pretty much great for me. I got to play basketball, study what I wanted, and get to go away from home. Where things kind of took a turn is when I was studying athletic training, actually. So in my sophomore year, we had to take intro to athletic training course in order to get into the program. And during that time, I was getting the good grades. I enjoyed the coursework. I enjoyed the science. I like sports medicine. I enjoy, that healthcare aspect of things. I like muscle. I like bones, and that was something that I had a love for at that time. And when I was taking the course, the negative part about it was I didn't really like being in an athletic training room. Although that's one aspect of athletic training, being in the room and taking care of athletes, taping them up, taking care of them post-op, checking in with them, giving them ice and different things like that. One thing that I didn't like was always having to report, or if I was an athletic trainer, I would always have to report to a physician. I would always have to report to a sports medicine physician that would eventually tell me now what to do. And my personality at that time, what I didn't realize back when I was in high school was that I wanted to be the leader. I wanted to be the one that was making the decisions. I wanted to be the one that was calling the shots. Not because I was cocky or felt that I was the best, but that's just what I like to do. I like to have that responsibility, and I didn't mind being, the leader in the healthcare team model. I didn't mind having that responsibility. So when I realized that is when a switch kind of flipped in my head, and I realized maybe being a doctor is what I want. Maybe being a doctor is the path that I want to go down. And at that point and at that moment, I was like, I'm doing the wrong thing. So I had to really reassess everything. I had to pretty much start from scratch and say, what do I really want here? Do I like this school enough to stay here when a third of the reasons, I talked about playing basketball, going to school, and being away from home. A third of the reason was that I wanted to go and do athletic training. So now a third of the reason why I'm at that school is gone. The school being far away ended up being, something that I didn't necessarily like all the time. Having to take a plane back and forth to get to my home, it was costly. And also, it was pretty cold up there. So 2 out of the 3 reasons why I'm at the school is now diminished because I don't like athletic training anymore. I want to be a doctor, and I am far away from home, and I have to travel back and forth all the time. I feel like I'm living this double life, right? Anybody that goes away to school knows that you kind of feel like you're living a double life when you're coming back home and then you're going back to school. And basketball, although it was great, I knew I wasn't going to be a professional. I knew that this was something that's going to eventually end. And at that time, I had to make the decision to give up basketball. Although I love my teammates, I love the program, I just felt that if I wanted to truly chase my dream, and eventually, this became a love for mine, and the more I looked into being a pre-med, the more I looked into medical school, I became infatuated with it, and I loved it. So, that became my priority, and that became my dream. And playing college basketball, although I had already successfully finished the season and went through everything, and I loved it, and all the benefits that came along with it, I knew that I'd have to eventually stop one day. And at that time, I decided to call it quits and transfer schools to now I transferred back home, closer to home, to Stony Brook University on Long Island. And Stony Brook, the reason I transferred there was because it was closer to home. It had pre-med students pretty much throughout the entire school. It was heavy in the sciences and research, and it also had a medical school attached to it. So I felt that these would give me all the advantages I needed to be the best pre-med student possible. So at this time, now I'm in between. I left Brockport. I'm in between semesters, and I'm trying to figure out what to possibly do to make myself stand out as a pre-med student. What am I going to do? I'm just a student athlete. I'm now behind. I'm behind, and I'm in classes with people that are years younger than me, and I'm trying to pretty much play catch up to, get to my application and get to medical school. So at that time, I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm really lost. So I do a lot of research. I do a lot of Googling. I do a lot of YouTubing, And a lot of my inspiration and a lot of my drive, a lot of my knowledge of the pre-med process has actually come from YouTube. And one of the reasons why I decided to make this channel to begin with, because I wanted to be able to give back to those out there that might have a similar story as mine, similar perspective, and also maybe those of you that may want to take some bits and pieces of my story to apply to your path. So at that time, I'm trying to figure everything out, and I'm doing searches, I'm doing research, I'm trying to figure out, what do I do? I know now I have a list of pre-med requirements. In order to go to medical school, they tell you got to do volunteering, got to be involved in the community, you got to do volunteering at your school, you got to be part of clubs, you got to be part of organizations, you got to be part of research, you got to do shadowing, you have to have letters of recommendation, so that means you have to make good connections with people, and you have to do well in your courses, score well in the MCAT, then you could apply. All these different things. Every pre-med student knows that's super overwhelming. And for me, going from not liking something in Brockport in athletic training at my first school, and then eventually to finding something I love, I wanted to continue that. I wanted to continue that cycle of, I want to do things that I enjoy. I want to do things that, get me fired up. So at that time, now I had to figure out, what do I do from here? And I'm about to go into that in a little bit more detail right now. So my philosophy with doing the things you enjoy and putting that passion at the forefront of your goals and your priorities is, if you do that, you will eventually just want to put in that extra effort that will get you to where you need to be. I was always somebody that didn't take the traditional route. I always wanted to take the road less traveled, and I always wanted to do things that brought me fulfillment over just doing what's on that list of things to do. So although I had that list and I knew I had to knock certain things out, I decided that let me try to do things that kind of fit my interests. What are my interests at the time? Well, they're sports medicine, athletics, and I still had a passion for basketball, so I wanted to do as many things as possible that surrounded those things and my love for medicine at the same time, and kind of embed everything and mesh it together in order to get me my final product, which was that entire list checked off of things I needed to have to apply. So the first thing I did was I got a job as a personal trainer. I initially had a job as a grocery store front desk worker, and I didn't really like it. I didn't really like the people, and I wanted a job that was flexible enough to where I can make my own hours and also get a little bit of a healthcare experience. And personal training allowed me to do that. The beauty of personal training was I could make my own hours. I could work for 1 hour, do 2 30-minute sessions, and then go back to school, and then come back later in the day and do 2 more 30-minute sessions. And I could do that multiple times a week and also on the weekends, and have flexibility to work around my schedule. And that was amazing for me. Another thing that it allowed me to do was experience kind of like a doctor-patient relationship, where people are coming to you to get treatment. They're coming to you to better themselves and better their mental, their physical. A lot of people have cried and broken down to me because of their experience, their mental health, and their experience with their physical, and how they were obese, and or how they are at the point where their doctor's telling them that they need to lose weight in order to become healthy for their livelihood. If they have diabetes or they're pre-diabetic, then they're trying to avoid going on medication for diabetes. So these are all these things that I'm getting exposed to and having to learn about on my own, and how to treat and how to handle them from diet and exercise perspective. So it gave me that patient-doctor relationship, where now I'm giving them information from what I know, trying to inform them, and allowing them to now make the decision of what they want to do, work with me or work with other people to better their lives. And that was something that was really fulfilling to me, and I think it really allowed me to boost my ability to communicate with people, and boost my ability to work with people of all different backgrounds and shapes and sizes. So that was something that I initially did. Next thing I did was I began to volunteer. So I volunteered with a physical therapy clinic at my school, an outpatient physical therapy unit, and I did that for 100 hours, and it was cool. it didn't give me exactly what I wanted because I was doing a lot of the maintenance stuff. Any of you that may have, volunteered, you have to wipe down the equipment and all these different things, and that wasn't really huge for me, but it allowed me to see a little bit, different dynamic of medicine, where it's physical therapy, where I was looking at people rehab and the physical therapy, the physical therapists work with patients. So I was able to see that communication is there as well. The next thing I did was Pre-Med Society. And in Pre-Med Society, it's basically a pre-med club that pretty much tries to teach you how to be the best applicant possible. There are some things that I didn't like about the club, and eventually, 2 years down the line, I became vice president and public relations director for that club, and was able to change some of those things. So we implemented a lot of new things. We brought in a lot more guest speakers, doctors, scientists, researchers, undergrads, medical students. We brought them all in and had discussions with our club to kind of teach us what it is to be a doctor, what it is to be a medical student, medical school applicant, and what to look out for in the process. So that also gave me a lot of insight on my journey as well. Another thing I did was join a neuroscience club. I did that for a year and a half. That was cool as too, but it didn't really give me that same fulfillment as Pre-Med Society, and I also wasn't an executive board member for that club. On top of that, I also, because I was certified in personal training, I went back to my high school alma mater and I implemented a basketball strength and conditioning program with them. That was amazing for me because not only was I able to utilize the connection I already had with my high school program, but I was able to work with a lot of kids that idolized me or looked up to me as a role model when I was playing, and I was able to go back and coach them and implement something that I wish I had during my time. So I was able to really, put in something new, innovate, and make something of my own by going back to my high school and training with these kids. On top of this, I then went on to do some shadowing and get research experience. So up until this point, I have the experience with personal training. I had the experience with training, the high school student athletes in strength and conditioning. I had the experience in Pre-Med Society for a little bit, and I had the experience in volunteering as in the physical therapy clinic. But now I need to get exposure to medicine. Now I need to get exposure to what it is to be a doctor. So I started shadowing. I shadowed 2 orthopedic surgeons. One was from Stony Brook, and another one was from the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York City. And I spent most of my time with the Hospital for Special Surgery surgeon. He's a shoulder surgeon and sports medicine. And during that time, I really just was able to learn what it was, the day-to-day of being a doctor, being a surgeon. I learned what it was to be to do surgery, and be a surgeon. Initially, I was kind of wary of surgery because I knew, once again, it took a little bit more training to become a surgeon, and I knew the responsibilities required to be a surgeon. But once I got exposed to it, I realized that, maybe I could see myself doing this. So anybody out there that may not be sure, that really told me that you have to really try everything in order to know what you really want. And at that time, I realized that maybe surgery is what I want, or, maybe this field is something that I'm interested in. So I'm getting more and more passion for medicine. I'm able to take a lot of the stuff I learned from, observe them do when they speak to their patients. I brought it back to myself as a personal trainer, and I started using some of the nuances and started the dialects that they use when speaking with patients to my personal training clients, and they felt even more comfortable with me after that. And then I was able to get some research experience through that shadowing. I was able to help co-author a textbook chapter, and I pretty much just asked them, before I started shadowing, I told them that I had shadowed before, and I was looking for something a little bit more interactive, something a little bit more intensive, and he was able to offer me a small research position where I was able to do some writing for him and gain some experience in research. Another one of my main research experiences was with my undergrad, and I did that for over 2 years. I'm still doing a little bit of research with them too, and that's walking rehabilitation for people post-stroke or with neurological disorders or damage. So people with spinal cord injuries, people with Parkinson's disease, different things like that, and people post-stroke. So I mainly focus on people post-stroke. And what I did, we studied both novel and existing rehabilitation mechanisms for walking. So it was great because it was an interdisciplinary field where you're looking at cardiovascular, stroke. You're looking at physics with the motion and the forces that they produce when they're walking. You're looking at muscle physiology, or the muscle activity that's being produced when they're walking, neurobiology, the neurons that are firing to allow this rehabilitation to take place. And you're also looking at a physical therapy aspect of rehabilitation and aid and muscle building. So it was something that was super multi-dimensional, multi-layered, and I was able to get exposure to that through research and learn how to produce research, how to consent, how to speak to patients, how to design experiments, and how to take that data and all these large numbers and compile it into a research project, a poster, an abstract, a paper. So research was something that brought me closer to becoming a scientist. And when it comes to being a scientist and being a physician, they kind of go hand in hand. If you want to be a great physician, you have to be a good scientist to be able to always know that you have to improve what you're doing every single step of the way, and that research and medicine is always changing and always improving. In order to be a great physician, you have to be a great scientist. So it kind of merged those two fields for me, where I was interested in science, interested in being a physician, merged those two and allowed me to kind of grow in that way. So at this point, I'm super interested. I'm really into it. And this is to the point where I'm pretty much taking my first MCAT. So I took my first MCAT. I didn't do well. For those of you who want to know how I improved my MCAT score from a 500 to a 513 in under a year, I'm going to attach the video to the description. I'll also link it into this video. But I took my MCAT for the first time and I didn't do well. I was all ready to apply. I was super excited. I was like, yes, I'm finally going to be applying to medical school. I'm ready to go. I've gotten all these experiences, all these things I could talk about. And then eventually I was like, I hit the point and I saw my MCAT score and I was disappointed because I felt that I wanted to apply a little bit more broader. I wanted to get a higher score. I wanted to apply to more MD programs than a 500 MCAT would have allowed me to do. And I had to, face that realization that, maybe I have to wait another year and retake this exam. And at the same time, I was developing my own nonprofit organization and charity basketball tournament to give back to the community, and something that, I've grown passionate, and we were going on our third annual year for doing that. So at the same time, I'm going through all these different things. I'm developing this tournament, and I kind of say to myself, it may not be too bad if I wait another year. And I took a gap year. And during my gap year, I'm currently in it. I'm working as a clinical research coordinator for an orthopedic practice. And at this time, I've already taken my gap. I graduated, and then I took my MCAT again. Once again, if you want to see how I improved my score, check out that video. I got a 513, and I was super happy because this allowed me to apply to the schools I wanted to. And I applied to all the schools, and putting together every single thing that I did, and writing a personal statement, and writing up my primaries, getting everything in on time and early. I was fortunate enough to receive 14 interviews based on the 20 schools that I applied to, and I was able to get a little over 5 medical school acceptances from those 14 interviews. I actually ended up going on 10 of those 14, and so I've got acceptances to almost 70% of the schools I interviewed at thus far. And so that's really my story from the beginning to now. If there's anything you want me to go over or expand on, and I know I kind of spoke a lot about the beginning and how I transitioned, and then towards the end was a little bit more fast. But if you want me to go through a little bit more on my application process, I look forward to going through my primaries, speaking on the secondaries and things to do, and doing more like teaching videos with that, and breaking down my primaries, how I wrote them, also how I organize everything. So if you want more details on that, please make a comment down below, and I'll be sure to put that on the top of my list as far as videos I'm looking to make. thank you again for listening to my story. I appreciate it. I know this video is going to be a little bit longer, but I appreciate you if you stuck to the end and you listened to my story. And I hope that this could bring you some inspiration or some, motivation and help you in your journey as well. Thank you again. Please subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed this video, and turn on post notifications so you know when I post every single week. Also, good luck to everyone out there applying. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Let's get it.